In November 2022, cautious optimism swept across Ethiopia as the federal government and the Tigray People's Liberation Front signed the Pretoria Agreement, aiming to end a brutal civil war that had torn the nation apart for 2 years. The deal promised to halt a conflict that had killed hundreds of thousands and displaced millions, offering hope for national healing and a desperately needed sense of stability for families uprooted by violence. More than a ceasefire, it was meant as a comprehensive roadmap to a new political reality, addressing the humanitarian catastrophe, rebuilding shattered communities, and attempting to mend a deeply fractured nation. International observers hailed it as a triumph of African diplomacy, a rare moment of hope in a region often plagued by conflict. For ordinary Ethiopians, it meant the possibility of returning to normal life and an end to daily fear. Yet, as of February 2026, that optimism has faded. The promises of Pretoria remain largely unfulfilled, and the peace process is on the brink of collapse, with many communities still living in uncertainty. Deep mistrust, unresolved grievances, and the continued presence of external forces have made genuine peace elusive, fueling anxiety and frustration among the population. The journey from agreement to reality has been far more difficult than anticipated, with each setback eroding faith in the process. This video will explore why the Pretoria Agreement faltered, examining its core tenets, the key breakdowns that undermined progress, and the profound human cost of stalled peace. Understanding these failures is crucial for grasping Ethiopia's current crisis and for identifying what must change to prevent renewed conflict and further suffering. The future of millions and the region's stability hangs in the balance, as Ethiopia stands at a crossroads between hope and renewed turmoil. To truly understand Pretoria's failure, we must revisit the tangled roots of the Tigray War, a conflict shaped by history, politics, and deep-seated grievances. The conflict's origins lie in decades of political power struggles and simmering ethnic tensions that have long defined Ethiopia's landscape. From 1991 to 2018, the Tigray People's Liberation Front, or TPLF, dominated Ethiopia's ruling coalition, overseeing a system often criticized for authoritarianism, ethnic favoritism, and the marginalization of rival groups. This bred deep resentment among other ethnic groups, especially the Amhara and Oromo, who felt excluded from power and opportunity. In 2018, Abiy Ahmed rose to power as prime minister, launching sweeping reforms and promoting a unified national identity, an approach that clashed directly with the TPLF's federalist vision and desire for regional autonomy. Tensions escalated rapidly as the TPLF retreated to its Tigray stronghold, culminating in a dramatic standoff over postponed national elections in 2020, which the TPLF saw as a threat to their influence. The TPLF's attack on federal army bases triggered a devastating war, marked by shocking brutality, atrocities, and widespread suffering inflicted by all sides. The conflict quickly spiraled out of control, with federal, Amhara, and even Eritrean forces advancing deep into Tigray, turning the region into a battleground. Massacres, ethnic cleansing, and famine-like conditions soon followed, displacing millions and creating one of the world's worst humanitarian crises in recent memory. The legacy of trauma, loss, and deep mistrust would haunt any future peace effort, casting a long shadow over hopes for reconciliation in Ethiopia. The Pretoria Agreement rested on several pillars designed to end the devastating conflict and lay the groundwork for rebuilding Ethiopia's future. It was a comprehensive roadmap, shaped by months of negotiation and international mediation, aiming to address both the immediate crisis and the deeper issues that fueled the war. First, the agreement called for a permanent cessation of hostilities, an immediate and total stop to fighting, creating a secure environment for humanitarian aid to reach those in desperate need. Second, it required the disarmament and reintegration of TPLF fighters, a process closely linked to the withdrawal of all foreign and non-federal forces from Tigray's territory, to restore local control and stability. Third, the agreement promised unhindered humanitarian access and the restoration of essential services, such as banking, electricity, and communications, so that daily life could begin to return to normal for millions. The deal also called for the creation of an interim regional administration in Tigray, paving the way for future elections and the political reintegration of the region into Ethiopia's federal system. Disputed territories were to be resolved through peaceful dialogue, while transitional justice mechanisms were promised to ensure accountability for wartime atrocities and to help communities heal. These pillars aimed not only to address immediate suffering, but also to tackle the root causes of conflict and lay a foundation for lasting peace and recovery. Yet, each of these steps required a level of trust and cooperation, qualities that had been eroded by years of violence and suspicion. Ultimately, the agreement's success depended on both sides honoring their commitments and working together to turn promises into reality. Implementation faltered almost immediately after Pretoria. Initial progress, silenced guns and partial restoration of services, gave way to delays and deepening mistrust. Humanitarian aid was hampered by bureaucracy and insecurity, then devastated by donor suspensions over aid diversion. Disarmament stalled as the TPLF refused to fully hand over weapons, while Eritrean and Amhara forces remained in Tigray. The federal government demanded disarmament first, while Tigrayan leaders feared leaving their people defenseless. Accusations of bad faith flew on both sides, and the slow pace of restoring services fueled resentment. The African Union's monitoring team lacked the power to enforce compliance, allowing both sides to sidestep commitments. The core promises of the agreement began to look hollow. Fragile peace cracked under the weight of unresolved grievances and mutual suspicion. Political developments soon struck at the heart of the peace process. In May 2025, Ethiopia's election board revoked the TPLF's legal status, barring them from politics and undermining the spirit of Pretoria. The TPLF condemned the move as a betrayal, seeing it as exclusion from the very system they fought to rejoin. Meanwhile, large areas of western and southern Tigray remain under Amhara control, and Eritrean troops still occupy parts of the north. Human rights abuses and land seizures continue, preventing displaced Tigrayans from returning home. The federal government's failure to enforce withdrawal shattered faith in its commitment to peace. For many, this is not peace but a continuation of conflict by other means. The combination of political exclusion and occupation has created a powder keg, raising fears of renewed war. While leaders continue to debate, the human toll of a stalled peace is truly devastating. Starvation is rampant in Tigray, with over 60% of children under 5 now suffering acute malnutrition. The suspension of food aid and ongoing insecurity have together created a silent famine. Over 1 million people remain displaced, unable to return to homes still occupied by hostile forces and militias. Most are trapped in overcrowded camps, dependent on insufficient aid for their daily survival. The war destroyed schools, leaving millions of children out of education and increasingly vulnerable to exploitation. The psychological trauma is immense, with entire communities struggling to recover from loss and violence. Promised justice for wartime atrocities has not materialized, deepening wounds and fueling anger and resentment. Without accountability or recovery, the risk of future conflict only grows. The Unravelling of Pretoria shows that peace is more than a signed document. Without trust and political will, even the best agreements fail. The most urgent step is the withdrawal of Eritrean and Amhara forces from Tigray, restoring security and enabling disarmament and returns. The TPLF's political ban must be reversed to revive dialogue and inclusion. Ethiopia needs an inclusive national dialogue to address power sharing, autonomy, and historical grievances. The African Union and international community must play a more active, robust role as guarantors. Accountability for atrocities is essential to break the cycle of impunity and begin healing. The alternative, renewed war and state fragmentation, is unthinkable. Only genuine dialogue, concrete action, and the slow rebuilding of trust can secure Ethiopia's future. The stakes could not be higher.